All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today's lesson, we are going to be talking about an event that really changed the face of the earth truly completely. And that is the Black Death. Okay. We're going to analyze how the Black Death started, examine how and why it spread so quickly, and then we're going to create an argument on what is the best thing to do during a pandemic or a plague. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's your warm-up picture. Now, you can tell which of these people are sick. They have those like red dots all over their skin, their chest and face and things like that. The other people, are the ones who are taking care of them, right? Now, here's my question. What do you think happened to these people? Do you think the ones who got sick, do you think all of them died? Some of them died? What about the people who healed them, or tried to heal them or help them? Do you think they passed away? Do you think they um, got it too and then, died, or do you think they survived? What do you think? Okay, so go ahead, write your response, okay, because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So the Black Death was also known as the Great Mortality. What was it? It was basically the bubonic plague. Okay. The bubonic plague, believe it or not, it's still around to this day. You know, but the thing is, if you do get it, we have, you know, antibiotics. We have antibodies for it. We have a cure for it. So you're good. Okay. Now, what are the symptoms of you getting it? Well, basically, your lymph glands would be swollen. You'd be looking like a frog in a sense because they'd be all huge. You would get these boils on your skin, like little pockets, of blood and pus, and that's what they'd be filled with. Um, a student asked me some years ago, would they burst? Yes, they would. Yeah, if they really got big enough where the skin stretched too much and it couldn't take anymore, yeah, it would bust. If you hit it pretty hard against something, yeah, it would bust. It was very, very painful. It would feel good for a second because all that blood and pus is released, but then now you have a big old open wound on your arm, on your chest, on your back, on your leg, wherever it may be. So yeah, it was temporary relief, but then after that, now you got a big old hole, exposed. So yeah. Other things: fevers, chills, headache, shortness of breath. You would be hemorrhaging, which is basically you're bleeding out. Um, some of the stuff I've read, people bled, of course, from the nose. Some people from the ears. There was even one thing, I don't know if it's completely true or not, but bleeding from the eyes. Yeah, it was that one was pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, and then also then vomiting. Okay. Now, what was the individual's rate of survival? Okay. It was about 30 to 50%. Really, it was more closer to 50%. So if you got it, you basically had a 50-50 chance. So, and a lot of people were on the wrong side of that 50%. Okay. So where did this start? Actually started off in Asia, you know, and then it just basically moved out, and around. Um, Now, one of the Mongols tried to take this town called Kaffa. Okay. Now, when they tried to take control of it, Kaffa basically closed their door because they had like a little moat type of thing, and they were surrounded by their tall walls. And they figured, oh, we're safe from these Tartars, the Mongols. Well, the Tartars, they had some people who were sick with the plague. They died and stuff like that. So their king, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that name, Johnny Johnnyberg, Johnnyberg, however you want to pronounce it. Basically, he tells his guys, "Hey, put those dead bodies on the catapult." Now, if you don't know what a catapult is, it's this device that can launch like big old boulders, you know, far, far distance. So he's like loaded up, put it with dead soldiers, and launch it into the city. So remember, I told you these boils would be all over people's bodies, right? These guys are dead, and just imagine this machine just chucking these dead bodies into the city, and these bodies be flying in the air, arms, legs, whatever, just flopping around, and sometimes they just hit like a tree, and just all that pus and guts, and and the the blood and all that stuff, and the boils just squirting out everywhere. So imagine these body hitting a tree, hitting hitting a house, the side of a wall, just and there's blood and pus all over the walls and running down, just even hitting the floor, just a body just right on the floor, just you know, um, that blood and pus squirting on food, on water, on people, on their animals, their chickens and pigs and things like that. So yeah, and it wasn't just one body or two bodies. They were launching all the dead bodies they had into the city. And these aren't just strangers. These are their comrades. These are their brothers in arms in fighting. They're launching their dead bodies, their friends at the city. This is the first true biological warfare tactic ever used. Okay, they didn't know at the time, but they are the first to use biological warfare. So a lot of people left Kaffa. Kaffa is right at the edge over the Mediterranean Sea is, and so a lot of people got on boats and took off. Now here's the thing: just like how it was with COVID, you didn't know you had it like right there and then. You know, you typically had it for several days already, and then you showed symptoms. You're getting sick, you're getting fever, you lose a sense of taste and things like that. And that's exactly what happened with these people. They didn't know they were sick, and yet they got on boats trying to get away, and they're thinking, oh, I'm safe. And then next thing you know, they start coughing. They start having a fever, the chills, boils start to form. And they scattered all throughout Europe. So in Constantinople, 90% of that population died. So out of every 10 people, 9 people died. Almost wiped out the whole town. And it was a big town. Okay. In the city of Sicily, 33% of the people died. So for every 3 people, one person would die. In other Italian port cities, anywhere from 50 to 60% of the town was wiped out and killed because they got the plague too. Excuse me. Um, one story I just was like, wow, just shocked me, learning about this stuff, was that in England and Germany, people would be walking through and they're like, oh, I'm going to go see this little town, and next thing you know, it's like, well, where is everybody? And everyone's basically dead. There were total ghost towns all over England and Germany. Why? Because a lot of the times, the people who were sick, in villages, they would have a well that's where they get their water. And some of these people who were sick are just like, well, I have a fever, so they would, instead of just getting like a cup and drinking from the cup, no, they would splash it on their face, drink the water from the bucket, and then put the bucket back into the well. So you know, now that water's contaminated. And when other people come to drink from that, guess what? Now they got it. So yeah, entire towns were gone. Now, a lot of people in Europe are like, well, we need a scapegoat. Who's to blame for this? So I hate to say it, but the poor Jewish people, they've been attacked all throughout history, and at this point, they start blaming them. Why? Who knows? The Jewish people have always been just like an easy target for people to blame, and people blamed them. So there was a massacre of Jewish people during this time because again they were the ones who caused this. How? I don't know, but they're the ones, you know. Now some people who were living in those port cities, they got started getting scared because hey, these boats are coming in, so they're like, oh my god, some people are getting sick. I need to leave. So they would leave, going more into the country, whether it's Italy or Europe, or it's not Europe, England or France. And they're the ones, again, they don't know they're sick, but they have it. And they're the ones who are carrying this disease throughout the country. Now, King Edward III, this man truly loved his daughter. I'm sure you guys know some, parents, maybe even your own siblings, who like they just love their children. They do anything for them. There's no I can't for them. They'll do whatever it takes. Um, he was one of those guys. And when the plague started going through London, he was like, you know what? No, no, no. I'm taking my daughter. We're going to our castle in the country. It's far away from everyone. We'll be safe. So that's what he does. Takes his daughter, and they're out there. Well, the daughter ends up getting sick and she dies. Now, how did this happen? Well, when they were going to the country, one of the maids went into the city to get food, stuff like that, supplies, and she ended up getting it, and she took care of the little girl, and that's how the little girl got it. Okay. Now, King Edward doesn't go like everyone else and start blaming the Jewish people or things like that. No, he basically says, why is this disease spreading the way it is? And he looks at London and the other towns in England and he goes, you know what? We're dirty people, man. There's garbage all throughout the city. You know, there's rats everywhere. There's just garbage everywhere. And then there's human excrement on the street. Now, if you don't know what excrement is, it's basically pee and poop. Because back in the day, they really didn't have much of a good plumbing system. So sometimes people would go in a bucket and they toss that bucket out the window. So if you were walking down an alley, chances are you might have gotten, splashed with that. And where did it go? Did it just sit in the alleyways? Sometimes. Sometimes it, went down into the street and from the street, wherever, and people are walking on it, horses, trotting around, pooping. So it's just nastiness all around. The River Thames, it's not blue, it's not like, hey, this is nice drinking water. No, it's basically like a sewage line because all the pee and poop eventually would get to it, and it's just nasty, dirty water. And that's what the king's saying. Remember, this is like about 400, 500 years before germs is even thought of, but yet this king realizes dirtiness, you know, not being hygienic, not cleaning your hands and your body. Disease can spread that way. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Scotland, they are owned by England at this time, and Scotland wants to be free. Now, in Scotland, there's no cases of the plague. Nobody in Scotland has the plague. And some of the people have some great ideas like, we should get our independence now from England because a lot of people are dying from this plague. You know, we should like attack now and then get our independence while we still can. You know, they're hurting, they're dying. We should get our independence now. So they gather up their soldiers and they're marching. They're marching. They get to the border between Scotland and England, and they decide to like, you know, kind of stay for a minute. You know, And some of the guys go into the English side and go into town, have some drinks, have some fun with the ladies, things like that. They come back. Okay, let's start marching. Da, da, da. And then all of a sudden, some of the soldiers are coughing here and there. So guys have the fever, the chills. And then these commanders are like, whoa, what's going on here? Hey, who was in your barracks? Who'd you share a tent with? Oh, these guys. And then look at those guys, and those guys are coughing, fever, chills. Okay, who you been hanging around with? Oh, these guys. All of a sudden, those guys are getting sick. Basically, the whole army eventually got the plague and died. They could have easily just stayed home on Scotland's side, wait till England was basically over and done with, and then attack. But they couldn't wait, and their soldiers ended up dying. Now, how did the disease spread? The answer a lot of people go with is the rats, mice. Okay, yes and no. Okay, the thing that really spread the disease were fleas. Now, fleas and mice go together like, peanut butter and jelly. Okay, but the thing is, these fleas would bite the mice, and the mice didn't die. They basically became the like the host in a sense, you know. So the fleas had the disease. They bit the mice. Mice didn't die, but they were able to carry them around. Carry the fleas around. Now, you and me right now, if a flea jumped on us and bit us, we would feel it. We'd be like, same thing with like a mosquito. You feel that little bite that they give you. Same thing with an ant and things like that. Why do we feel that instantaneously? Because we're not used to that. But back then, I mean, ants, fleas bit them all the time. So it's kind of like, darn that flea, But we would feel like, oh my God, what is that? You'd feel that right away. So early on, when the plague was like barely starting, some people would be traveling and they see these dead bodies on the side of the road. So they're like, you know what? This person doesn't need this shirt, these shoes. They don't need this jacket. They don't need this blanket. They don't need this money. And they basically robbed the dead person. They don't need it. So either these people used it themselves or they sold it, to in the next town. Like, hey, I got this blanket. How much you want for it? I'll give you like, you know, a gold piece. Sold. Here you go. You know. As time went on, people started being like leaving the dead bodies alone. Going into a house and then like looking to steal stuff and then being like, oh, there's somebody still alive, or this bodies are just dead. And there could be monies just sitting right there. They're not going to touch it because they know chances are that person was sick and dying, probably touched it or coughed on it or did something to it. And they're like, no, I'm not going to touch it. The other sad thing that happened during this time, like sons and daughters would abandon their parents. Like the parents got sick. I'm sorry, I can't help you, mom, dad, and they leave. Husbands would leave wives. Wives would leave husbands. Even some people would leave their children behind. Yeah, like I don't want to get sick. I don't want to die. I got to take care of your other brothers and sisters, so you're going to stay here. So some people were left behind in their homes, rooms to die. You know, so it was pretty bad. So trade, basically like I was during COVID, came to a complete halt. Um, and remember I told you about the peasants. All they had basically was their souls and the church turned their backs on them. The church denied people things. Okay. Now, if you're not part of the Christian Catholic faith, there's this thing called the last rites, which is given to you before you die. So when you move on, your soul is basically clean. It's like a clean slate. You know, um, so a lot of these people, peasants who had the plague, they would bring, they would go to the priest. They would bring their family members who were dying, trying to get them their last rites before they died, and they would get denied by the priest. The church would close their doors so people couldn't come in. They denied people their blessings and denied them their confession. Now, especially to a Catholic, confession, is big, because if you die and you haven't confessed, it's basically like it's like a weight on your soul, and when you move on, that's counted against you. So, in a sense, some people felt like the church was basically telling the peasant people, "You're going to hell, and we're not going to help you because we don't want to get sick, we don't want to die." So this is where some people started to change their point of view on the church. So some people saw the church as basically like, you know what, if they're not helping us, then what's their purpose? They have no real power. They're powerless. You know, we we've been asking for help, we've been doing all the stuff, the right things that we're supposed to do, and this is what we get? Nothing? No help at all? You know what? Forget this. So some people took matters into their own hands. Now, there's a group of people called the flagellants. These people felt that the reason that bad things are happening is because, um, of our sinful ways and things like that. So, to kind of counter that badness, some people suffer the way Jesus did, against with the Romans. So, if you don't know the story, basically, Jesus was whipped and things like that. Some of these whips had like little metal shards, like little nails at the end. So when they whipped, it would like tear off the skin, stuff like that. So these guys would basically do that. They get these whips and whoosh, whoosh, right on their backs. They did this for 33 and a half days. And some of these groups could be as small as 10 and some as large as 1,000. Now, here's the thing that's really, really like nasty and kind of like, ew, that's gross. Some of these guys would walk through towns just whoosh, whoosh, just smacking themselves with this whips. And remember, I told you it had like little metal pieces. So when it gets to the skin and they rip it, some of the blood just flung off. And people would be standing on the side of the road, and this blood would be on them, on their face, on their clothes, everything. Now, typically, you and I would be like, "Oh heck no, get that off me!" Ew. you know. But these people, because they saw that these guys are suffering the way Jesus did, and they're taking this pain for them, they saw this blood as basically holy, and they started smearing it all over their bodies. So even if it's just a little bit got on their face, they would smear it on their face and on their arms and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah, I know. It's just really like that's disgusting. But back then, they believed that helped. Now, in 1351, finally, someone comes with a great idea. Huh, if you get near somebody, you could get sick. Why don't we quarantine? Keep to our homes, only come out if we truly need to for water or food, things like that. Other than that, just, maintain your own home, and things like that. Take care of yourself and, yeah, avoid contact as much as possible. And guess what? It worked. It did slow down the plague. Okay. Now, here's the other thing, too, about the plague. And this is what really upsets me about people with like COVID. They're like, well, it was for a year, so it's over with. No, 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 no. See, the plague was around for like 8 years, 10 years, something like that. So it wasn't just like 1 year or 2 years and that was it. No, this was going on for several years. So just like now, COVID is still around. It's just now we have stuff to fight it, you know. Now, like I said, basically two-thirds of the world dies. Um, but there is some silver lining for those who survived. Now that a lot of the workers are dead, companies, store shop owners, they're trying to find workers, and the number of workers is very small. So they're trying to, hey, don't work for that guy over there. Work for me. How much is he paying you? $10? I'll give you $12. Oh, he's going to give you 14. I'll give you 15, and I'll give you a day off. In the week, you can take a day off. So the workers got more benefits. This is the first time that the word was ever used by people, the average worker. And that word is vacation. That word was never ever used before. But now at this point, from here on out, yeah, they could use that word, vacation. I'm going on vacation. Okay. Another thing too, less people means more food. You know, And with that being said, with less people, now there was a large amount of stuff, more clothes, more food. That means that the price is going to go down on things. Because now, a store shop owner, if he has a bunch of food like apples, when the population was high, he could keep the price high because, hey, people were hungry, they need the food. Now that there's less people, well, if everyone eats an apple every day, I'm still going to have a bunch of apples left, and then they're going to rot, and I'm not going to make any money off that. So they lowered the price, 2 for 1, type of thing. And lastly, there's a lot of space. A lot of people die, so now there are lots of homes that are empty. So people are trying to sell those homes, sell that property, you know, and people have their choice now. Where do they want to live? What do they want to do? Okay. So those who survived did live a little bit better than it was before the plague. So really quickly, here's a picture on the far left. It's a whip without the little metal shards. The one in the middle is a little picture to give you an idea of what it looked like back in the day. And the one on the far right is people who actually this still goes on to this day. And if you look at that guy who's at the very front, that really red part, that's muscle. His skin is basically gone. He's whipped himself so much that it's there's no skin. Okay. Now here's your question. What are your thoughts on the Mongols using the dead bodies as weapons? You have to remember these were their friends, these were their comrades, or the guys they went to war with. And here they are, now they're putting the bodies on the catapults and using it as a weapon. What are your thoughts on that? Is that smart? Is that horrible? Is that like disrespectful? I mean, how do you see it? Using the dead bodies of your soldiers as basically weapons. How do you see it? Okay. So go ahead and write your response to that. Once you're finished, you're done with this lesson. So hopefully you guys learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. You guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?